Chapter 42. Stick Together. Adam and Lake were feeling bad about leaving the others, but excited that in roughly 3 hours they would be arriving back in Effingham and finally be able to see their parents again. Adam hoped that Lake would be able to help them. Exhausted and running on fumes, Adam thought about stopping for a quick break. His desire to see his parents was keeping him going, but he needed some rest, or at least a small recharge of the batteries. Adam pulled the car onto the shoulder of the deserted highway and grabbed an apple from a cooler they had packed before leaving North Dakota. He took a bite. Adam was starving, and it tasted great. He closed his weary eyes and told himself that he was only going to rest for 10 minutes. However, as soon as his eyelids closed, Adam passed out from exhaustion and fell asleep. Adam didn't have a phone, and Verona had no way of contacting him. She didn't even have the address where he was headed, nor did she have time to go get him. Verona didn't know how she was going to get through hundreds of Jinn, didn't know if she was going to be able to get to Assur in time, and she would need to do it without Adam and Lake. This realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Verona had shown amazing strength and poise throughout this whole journey, but she had hit an insurmountable wall. Verona tried to tell Lincoln it was going to be okay, but midway through her sentence, her voice shook just before she broke down and burst into tears. She dropped her head into her hands, sunk in the seat, and hid her eyes as she cried. Lincoln was shocked because he had never seen Verona look scared before, but he understood exactly what she was feeling because he felt the same dread at that moment. He, too, had a feeling of despair sweeping through his body. Lincoln had already switched places with Jack, who was now sprawled out in the tiny back seat, rubbing his injured cheek. He reached out and took Verona's hands and lowered them away from her face, but he just held them and didn't say a word. While Verona cried, she just kept on hearing Malcolm's words in her head. Stick together. Stick together. It's the only way. Stick together. Stick together. It's the only way. Miles away, Lake, who had also fallen asleep, found herself in another vivid dream. She was standing in the ruins of what appeared to be a large city. Everything was white and gray with ash. Lake could feel widespread suffering all around her. In the distance, Lake heard children crying. She rocked out of her thoughts when she saw Verona and Jack walking by. Half of Jack's face was badly burned and scarred, and Verona appeared to be looking for something or someone. Lake called out to Verona, "Where is Lincoln?" Verona slowly turned her head and looked over at the young girl with a blank stare of desperation. She pleaded, "I've lost him. Please help me find him." Horror-struck, Lake started looking around, but all she saw was a city in ruins, filled with despair and misery. As she wandered the streets looking for Lincoln, she found Adam instead. He was carrying a large boulder, while chains bound his arms and legs. Lake yelled out for her brother, but stopped when she felt something pulling on her shirt. She looked down to see her old friend Malcolm Teller. He was covered in ash, and tears were streaming down his dirty face. He looked up and pleaded, "I told you to stick together." Over and over again, Malcolm screamed, "You should have stuck together. It was the only way. It was the only way." Lake reached down, but then sensed another presence. She looked up again to see the girl from the hospital, just inches from her face. Her hands were shaking Lake's body. The girl's grip hurt, and Lake tried to pry her hands away with all her strength, just as the girl commanded, "You have to go back. Wake up!" Lake jolted awake. Despite the heat, Lake was covered in a cold sweat. She gathered herself for a moment before she shook Adam awake, saying, "We have to go back," rubbing his eyes, trying to wake up. Adam saw it was just past 3 a.m. He asked, "What? Why?" "They need us," Lake demanded. "We should have never left them," she added. "We need to stick together." Although he wasn't fully awake yet, Adam still saw the concern on his sister's face and could hear the urgency in her voice, but asked, "Lake, we drove all this way, and Verona said that they didn't need us." Lake said, "Adam, our friends are fighting a battle against an army of Jinn. They need us. Our friends need us, and our parents need us, so we better hurry." Adam realized that there was no use arguing with her. Adam thought, were we being selfish by leaving our friends to fight alone? Deep down, Adam also knew they had to go back. Lake was right. They needed to hurry. He turned the key, put the car in drive, and whipped the U-turn, driving through the grass median before speeding north towards Verona.